Hello chaps and chapettes, and welcome to A History Of, a series where I look at the history of various vehicles, chat about the technical aspects, the engineering behind them, how they were used, and finally if they were any good. And today, if the title did not give it away, the vehicle we have today, I am looking at the Arado 234, the Blitz, or the Lightning if you will. The Arado was one of... Now, I will just call it the Arado, forgive me for that, but yeah, I will just mention just Arado at some stages rather than having the full name. But the Arado was one of the first operational, was the first operational jet bomber, and the last German plane to fly over Britain during World War II. The order for the Arado actually came in autumn of 1940. The Reichsluftministerium, or RLM, as is easy to pronounce, or German Aviation Ministry if you will, issued an order for a jet-powered high-speed reconnaissance aircraft with a range of over 130 miles, 2,100 kilometres. The only companies to submit an order for the project were Arado Flugwerk, a company lacking contracts in a war-torn Germany. Arado, who had seen some success with their trainer aircraft and earlier seaplanes, were very eager to get a plane for the Air Force that was not another Arado 95 trainer, a plane which lasted many years in other nations. In fact, up until the early 1960s, I think, it was converted into an attacker for the Algerian air forces. Anyway, before I get too distracted, the trainers and building planes under license did not bring Arado much fame nor money, so a company built plane was needed. So they threw their hat into the jet bomber market with the E370 project. Headed by World War I ace Professor Walter Blum, a pioneer in jet aviation, the original design was based upon works by Emil Eckstein, prior to him joining Henschel in 1941. A high-wing, conventional-looking design with twin Junkers Umo 004 engines under each wing. This would later cause problems for the plane, but the RLM were happy with the design, despite it being around about 100 miles shy of its intended distance. And so the Blitz was born. On paper, they estimated a speed of 480 miles per hour, 780 kilometers per hour, at around a sort of height of 20,000 feet, 6,000 meters. Two prototypes were ordered and built by the end of 1941. However, the use of the Umo 004 engines came back to haunt them. The engines would not be ready until February of 1943. This really shows how close to the jet age Germany was, but they lacked the resources to get them running. And even then, when the engines were given to Arado, they were not airworthy. So the first prototype of the 234 had to test their engines either on test beds or by taxiing around on the airfield. It was not until July of that year, 1943, at the Rhine Air Force Base and Airfield, the Arado 234 V1 took to the sky, with their chief test pilot, Flugkapitän Seele. Even before the test flight, the order had increased to 20 airframes, and many variations were on the building blocks. The plane was very Germanic and similar to the Heinkel bomber, with a fully glazed cockpit offering the pilot a fantastic view. The plane also offered a good balance to the pilot that was easy to fly. The plane had pressurised cockpits on most of its variations, along with an ejector seat for the pilot. One major issue with the plane's build was the fact that the pilot had no rear visibility, and this was because the airframe was built around fuel tanks which were set in the body itself. The Arado had problems with the Umo 004 engine. It was very fuel hungry, and the plane did have a few options of stopping this, sort of helping fix this. One of them was actually a glider that the plane would tow behind it, basically like a little trailer. fuel trailer that it would tow behind it, and I think it had around about 600 litres or something like that, 300 litres, 600 litres. It was relatively big and gave the plane a much greater operational range. Now, for the rear visibility issue, a fix was thought up in the way of a periscope, developed by pilot Eric Somner. And this was actually a periscope taken from I think it was a Panther originally, taken from the Panther tanks. There was also a camera system for the plane a little bit later on. A camera system would operate from the back of the plane, so the pilot could see along with the periscope. Originally, the 234 had a trolley system to launch the plane, and skids as a landing system, similar to that of the Comet rocket interceptor. However, this caused problems, mainly with damage to wings and engines on landing. They did try and change this by actually having the plane land on the trolley on the runway. But because the tyres on the trolley were so thick, it would cause the plane to bounce up and down and often cause more problems. So eventually they went with a mechanical landing gear system. The engine configuration was set to underslung to make mechanical repairs turn around even faster. The turbojet engines only had a service life of around 25 hours and needed an overhaul of the engine after every 10 hours in the sky. And the underslung engines made it easier and quicker to remove the engines as needed. One thing that caused issue with the Arado 234 program, however, was the Junkers Ju-004 engines. Now, they were needed for the ME-262 planes, and the Arado team suffered, unable to get the engines when needed. The team looked at the BMW 003 engine for use in the meantime, but there wasn't enough of them around. Also, the engine was a lot heavier and didn't have as much thrust as the Junkers Ju-004 engine. However, production of these, they didn't really have enough supply for demand. There were a great variety of models made by Arado by the end of the war of the 234, from reconnaissance jets to bombers and even night fighters. I think it was around about 20 to 21 variants of the Arado made by the end of the war. Now, in-game we have the Arado B-2A bomber, with a maximum payload of 2,000 kilograms, a very bomber and reconnaissance plane. Although intended as a bomber, it mainly saw its purpose as a reconnaissance vehicle with its two camera mountings. Around 210 of the B-series were created and rushed into use as the Allies invaded Normandy. On the 2nd of August 1944, the first combat mission was flown, taking photos of the beachheads over Normandy, and it was also the last aircraft to fly over England in April of 1945. The Arado 234 wanted speed more than anything and used it to keep it safe, which it did for the most part. However, on the 11th of February 1945, the first Arado 234 was taken out of the sky by an RAF fighter. A Hawker Tempest went into a fast dive on the Arado 234, returning to base after a reconnaissance mission over England. It was flying just above the tree line. The propeller aircraft managed to get a sort of sniff of the plane, managed to see it from above, and then swooped down to take a strafing run on it, and blasted the jet out of the sky. One of the other problems for the Arado pilots was also take-off and landing, and that was an issue in many ways for being attacked by enemy aircraft, but also because the plane didn't have enough thrust to get off the runways. It was a very heavy plane and needed the Ju-004 engines and also the BMW 003 engines. They didn't have a huge amount of initial thrust. They were quite good once you were up there, but when you were trying to take off, they didn't really get you off off the ground very easily. So a fix was come upon using a Walter HWK 109-500 rocket pod. It was designed to be jettisoned after takeoff and returned to the Earth via a parachute. It would produce over 1,000 kilograms of thrust for 30 seconds. Although no use to the plane when it starts off in the air for a game, For rearming, it would be nice to have this option for the plane. As you may have just seen, it is very hard to take off sometimes, especially on a smaller airfield. The second plane we have is the C series. These were equipped with twin BMW 003A engines, 4 in total. Only 14 airframes for the C series were made. With their twin BMW engine design, the BMW engine was considered using over the Umo engines because the ME262s were using the Umo. However, it didn't quite go quite according to plan for Arado, as the Heinkel HE-162 emergency fighter required the BMW engines, and we're now taking the limited number of BMW engines off of the shelf for the Arado, so it meant only around 8 of the C variants managed to get engines by the end of the war. The C series had greater thrust, however, with these twin engines, but extra weight of course, but it did have a better power to weight ratio than the B variant. The plane was also fitted with armaments, twin MG151 20mm machine guns, cannons firing forwards, and allowed the plane to carry 1,500 kilograms of bombs still. A proposed night fighter was in the works with a mid-range VHF band radar equipped. A gunner with a radio-controlled twin 30mm cannon system would be able to fire from the mid of the plane. The cannon would actually be radio-controlled and able to be turned forwards and to the rear of the plane. It was designed to attack night bombers. There was also going to be forward-firing 20mm cannons on board. Armed reconnaissance versions with similar systems were also in the works, which may make some interesting premium or even help bolster the German jet tree. Having these variants would be really quite cool, especially the night fighter variant as well, considering we have actually got some better sort of radar tech coming into the game. In games, these planes are rather handy. The C3, of course, is much greater use, and only being a 7.0 makes it a great bomber interceptor, even a heavy fighter in a pinch. The B2, however, is a little less versatile. Only having bombs equipped, the plane can easily take out a base with the payload, and usually get a second run before the match ends, but not much else. Now finally, I'm going to end talking about the surviving plane, the lone survivor as you will. The lone surviving plane is a B2 variant and sits at the Smithsonian Institute in America, equipped with the Walter HWK rocket-assisted takeoff pods. However, the legacy of this plane lived on through the English Electric Canberra and the American B-57. Although no Arados have flown since the late 1940s, their legacy did live on through lessons we learned from their technology. And one of their earliest offspring, the B-57, were flown into the mid-2000s via NASA. And here is where our story ends. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it somewhat interesting. Let me know below what you think of the Arado 234 and the video. And one last thing, I now have a Discord channel. Yes, you can now hang out with me at a Discord channel. Well, another one other than the other ones I frequent. It's called the Kaiju Club. Link below will let you join, so come along and hang out. All are welcome to chat about history and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, anyway, plugs are done. Thank you very much for watching and have a lovely day. Bye bye. Oh, one last thing. Thank you so much to Ivano for helping out with this video, just with the Tempest moment. Alright guys, bye bye, see you next time.